Thank you so much for the invitation. I was talking to Andrea, who is going to be one of the speakers as well, and we were both saying it's our first time here, and we've made the assumption that a lot of you are product creators. You can take that however you want, but how many people here are involved in making new products in some way, shape, or form? Quite a few. Okay, good. Good, we're like, otherwise people are going to be so bored and disappointed. So I feel like creating products is an incredibly fulfilling thing, and I should just get off that picture. There we go. Creating products is an incredibly fulfilling thing. I think it's like a deeply human drive because you're creating something that has a part of you in it, which if that sounds like having kids, I think that explains why it's so painful when the things we create fail to live. My first startup had a life like a lot of startups. It developed, it grew, it hired, it pivoted, but ultimately it failed to become a viable business. And when I shut it down, it wasn't just the years of intense effort that had gone into it that I had to mourn. It was that a lot of me was in that thing that I was creating and I was ending. With Kids Wi-Fi, I've done things a bit differently. I'd say that I've hacked with hustle. And by that I mean I've more quickly zeroed in on what makes a desirable product and had kind of laser focus on getting that into people's hands. And so I want to talk about that today. I'm probably going to look at my notes just a little bit because I know there's a lot that I want to get in 5 minutes. Kids Wi-Fi, in half the time of the lifetime of my previous startup, it's already to market, selling well, has retail deals, is expanding internationally. So there's something that's happened a lot quicker this time that I want to share about. So it's really easy to fall in love with your own product, even before you start building it. Even when it's just an idea in your head, you start daydreaming about it, thinking about it in the shower, like just all the time you're dreaming about your product and you fall in love with it. No one is going to love it as much as you do. People will say this about your own kids, it's true of products too. No one will love it as much. So if you hope to create something that other people adopt, you have to be uncompromising in your mission to get it in people's hands as soon as possible. So my concept with Kids Wi-Fi, which I have sitting back here, was to create a Nest-like device that provides safe internet access for kids. So an appliance, plug it in and it just works. And I thought, well, obviously the effectiveness of the filtering is going to be a key component of that. So I created an elaborate plan based on my previous experience doing work in computer security research. I had a plan of how we were going to do that. But thankfully, I first asked, what's the quickest way we could get something in people's hands? Because it would take a lot of time to build that infrastructure. So what we did was I got a bunch of range extenders. I configured them so that they could connect to an existing Wi-Fi network. They created a new Wi-Fi network, and the only thing that was different about the new one was that it had the DNS locked to a free filtered DNS service. That's all it did. Really a half-assed attempt. Took that, and feedback got it out there, and feedback started right away. And what we learned were what kind of parents were really excited to try this out. Which ones kept using it, and why did people stop using it? And the most remarkable thing to me was discovering that the things that were most important to people were none of the things that I thought were going to be the most important. Turns out, the most important thing to people is reliability. Your kid's internet goes down, and they're gonna get cranky. And there's no way to make parents crankier than to have your kids cranky on you. So it turned out that it was much, much more important to just have a rock-solid, reliable, simple process where parents weren't interrupted rather than building all of these extra features. And from that point on, the product development took a path that I couldn't have predicted. And it's far better for that because of that input that was driven from those really, really early stage users of the product. So speed is incredibly important in this, and it's not, you often hear about the startup hustle, which seems to imply just like working like crazy, really frantic. Speed is not about working frantically, but it is about finding the quickest path to people, finding the quickest path to get something to people. And the reason is when you're doing software development, hardware development, product development, nothing will kill a product quicker than a long gap where you're developing and not getting it in front of people. It's those big gaps where projects die. And so what happens is you picture your product fully formed. You're like, it's gonna look like this. So then you chart a linear path towards building that product, and you start building it. And then 6 months later, you realize that you haven't put anything in people's hands, and you still don't have something to put in people's hands, and it's too late for a lot of reasons to get back on the right path. So instead, you always have to fight that temptation. You always have to find a way to get it into people's hands quicker. As a software guy, it really frightened me to create my first hardware product. I don't know if you've noticed, has anybody backed a hardware Kickstarter project? Any of those ship on time? 0 hands, right? Like, always they're late, right? Like, they set a target, they raise funds, they're never on time. To run a successful crowdfunding campaign, experts say that you have to plan months in advance and seed it and get it all ready to go so that it pops and you raise it. It's just far too long. So we took a different path with Kids Wi-Fi. We found an existing device that did what we needed to do. It had the right components in it. It had the right form factor. Price was reasonable. We went and we bought 5,000 of them. The picture, which is a little hard to see, that's my youngest daughter, Nora, lying in a pile of boxes because we got skids of this existing product, ripped the box off, flashed our own software on it, put our sticker over the manufacturer's logo, and sold them. And if that sounds ghetto, it totally was ghetto. It completely ghetto. And yet, we didn't get a single customer complaint related to doing things that way. While to us, we were like, oh my goodness, our logo isn't properly silk screened. What if people peel back the sticker? No one peeled back the sticker, no one cared. We were the only ones that possibly cared about that. And it shaved months off of getting product to market and to people. So when you're doing things, you just have to always challenge your assumptions about what are really requirements to get there and to get to people. So once your product is in the hands of people, you need to relentlessly seek the truth about their experience with your product. Dig into the usage data. See if they're actually using it. Lots of people will install an app. How many people keep using it? Find out what their experience is. Ask them, give them every opportunity to explain. Expose yourself to the discomfort of hearing what their experience is like. And it's uncomfortable, messy stuff. Kids Wi-Fi, as a family-oriented product, meant that customer contact was probably more intimate than usual. I found myself in people's living rooms with my laptop open and an Ethernet cable across the floor while the kids are running around, in strangers' homes, right? I had to run Dairy Queen gift certificates over to families that were inconvenienced by a mistake that me or my team had made. There were all these kind of intimate points of contact that I much would have preferred to avoid. I actually would have been very, very happy to create an isolation, wrap other things around me and be apart from that. But without fail, those really messy interactions always led to the greatest realizations. It's where we discovered a really fundamental flaw or discovered something wrong with the product or got inspired for a new feature. And as uncomfortable as they were what ended up, I think, creating the great product that we have now. So I'm probably completely killing all the product designers in the room right now because everything I've said is about resisting the urge to build, and we're builders, we love to build. So here is where you get to fully indulge your visionary, perfectionist tendencies. Pick one thing and be absolutely great at it. Like, sweat all the details, make it exceptional. Most compelling products have this one thing. They have something that hooks people and draws them in and gets them excited. For Kids Wi-Fi, it's the setup process of all things. It's the setup process. When people take it out of the box and 2 minutes later they feel like they've protected their kids and done something, they're hooked. They'll keep using it, they'll tell their friends, they'll forgive 1,000 other little smaller issues with the device. They need to just have that quick win right at the beginning. And so we put an inordinate time into that process and probably made hundreds of revisions, lots of user testing to make that the experience that it is. That's the kind of magic that you need to find. You'll find that kind of focus when you focus on people over your product. And you'll gain the capacity to focus on those details and work on them when you resist the urge to over-engineer your product too soon. And you'll keep getting your priorities set when you have contact with your customers. So I guess I'm counseling delayed gratification here. You may get to indulge your creation fantasies less at the beginning of the process, but if you do things this way, it's much more likely that you create a product that you get to continue to shape over a long and healthy lifetime. So I hope that you all are able to take this and run with it in the things that you create. And I think we get to do Q&A now. Yes. All right.
All right. Thank you. So I'll look back to the audience first if there's any questions from the audience. If not, I can shoot a few. Anyone have questions?
How much is it?
Wow, awesome.
That's like the best question you're hoping for, right?
Yeah, and I wasn't even trying to pitch it, right? So it's at 129 in Canada. We sell direct. We're in, a lot of the retail is like coming online in the next bit. We're in showcase stores right now. We're in US and expanding internationally soon.
So a question for me, I would just say, is you spoke about how in your first startup, you really consumed your identity in many ways.
Right.
And of course, there's a transition out of this next one. How did you go through that transition in terms of your identity and just how you frame your life in terms of the role the startup plays?
Yeah, you know, it was a bit of a rebound startup. Like, there was no gap. Like, in fact, I had both running at the same time, and it was what the success of Kids Wi-Fi that made it easier to kill off the one before. That said, there was something, like, I was so vested in the previous startup happening that I was making it to be the perfect thing, and that resulted in a lot of that indulgences that I talked about. Whereas with Kids Wi-Fi, I kind of started it in a way of like, I need a quick win here. I've sunk a lot of money in this past startup, but I need to just get this to work. And that bit of like, almost a little bit of a disassociation from like, this thing needs to be perfect right from the start, actually helped me make it better than the last one ever was. Because I didn't sweat the details too much. I didn't make things perfect until and then I got time later. That's the thing I realized, is if you create a product that has enough of a life, now that we have sales and revenue, I'm gonna get to keep working on this for a long time, and I can make it perfect now. But making it perfect at the beginning probably would have delayed things too long.
Any other questions? One final one for me is, you spoke about being great at one, be great at one thing. And I think that's often a challenge for people in an entrepreneurial environment because you're naturally inspired by the next crazy idea.
Right.
How do you like kind of balance that approach where you want that innovation of going off the walls and having all those different ideas with that continued focus on that one thing that to be great at?
Yeah, I do. I think that is key. I can see also between my 2 or 3 startup experiences, there's a big temptation in the grass is always greener. What happens is you start with a thesis and you're like, I think the setup process is the most important thing, or whatever. And then you start to realize how hard it is, and you realize that you're not getting all the wins and it's not changing the world, and then you start to question like, oh, maybe we just need like a new affiliate sales model, and that'll be the thing. And you know nothing about affiliate sales models, but you think it sounds really good, and then you sink, a bunch of months into that, and then you realize 2 months into that, oh, that's why affiliate sales models are really hard. We didn't really know. Like, you are going to underestimate the challenges in each new thing that you approach. And so, right when things get hard, there may be a time to just say, I think we're still right. There's a time to also say we're wrong, and it's time to like that's going to be the wisdom. But a lot of the time, new things will seem more appealing than they really are, and so you need to stick with it. It's sometimes what you need to do.
Awesome. Thank you, Kris.
Yeah, thanks a lot.